When I was 13 years old, I bought a Rush album called 2112, and back in the day you would read the liner notes, and it was a cool story about this futuristic world where an authoritarian government was crushing individual initiative. And I loved the music, I loved the story. I was reading the liner notes, and at the bottom it says, dedicated to the genius of Ayn Rand. I'm 13, I don't know who Ayn Rand is, but the name sticks in my mind. A couple months later, I stumbled across a used copy of her novella Anthem. Took it home, I devoured it, and I immediately became obsessed with finding every book that Ayn Rand had written. And when I was about 16, I tackled Atlas Shrugged, and it really changed the way I think about the world.
This is a crucial moment in the history of this company. Now remember, each of us now belongs to the other by the moral law we all voted for and we all accept.
I don't. I don't accept it. And I'm going to put a stop to this once and for all.
How?
I'll stop the motor of the world.
In the 12 years that followed, the world was quietly crumbling with no end in sight. Regulations strangled the production of coal, gas, oil, and nuclear power. Power outages were frequent because no copper was available to maintain the transmission lines. We began to wonder. We began to talk about what he'd said and thought maybe he'd kept his word. That perhaps he had stopped the motor of the world.
Soon they'll have watchers watching the watchers. When will it end? Why do you stay in business?
To make money?
Yes, to make money. By creating a product that nobody ever dreamed of. And how's that working out for you?
It's getting tougher.
If you saw Atlas, the giant who holds the world on his shoulders, with blood running down his chest, knees buckling, arms trembling, but still trying to hold up the world with the last of his strength, what would you tell him to do?
I don't know. What would you tell him?
To shrug.
It's remarkable, people seeing what's happening in the United States today and realizing that's exactly what Ayn Rand writes about in a novel. It's supposed to be a story, it's supposed to be exaggerated, but they look at our government and they look at these crony relationships between businesses and politicians, and they look at the way that achievement and taking an initiative and doing things for yourself is denigrated in the media, and they think, oh my God, it's here.
In a way, Atlas Shrugged is a love letter to America, and also a warning about what happens when you allow the ideas of government running things, taking over parts of our lives. You start that process, it's gonna steamroll.
And the basic question in the world today is, who owns your life? Do you own your own life? Do you have a right to your own liberty, pursuit of happiness? Or, as the movie talks about, is it just fodder for the greater good? Are you there for the service of anyone else? Or do you have a moral right to your own life? I think that's one of the questions that the movie, that the book, that Atlas Shrugged presents, and it's a tremendously important question, especially given the context of a world we see all around us that seems to be crumbling.
The message was very, very clear to me then, what she was talking about, because it was to point out that you shouldn't be dependent on government and you can't trust government. And those were my instincts, which are more firmly planted today than ever before. But the other important thing that she pointed out during that time, and even in the movie you see it so clearly, is this whole idea of the people have responsibility too, because if you sanction bad government, that's what you get and that's what you deserve. And so therefore, yes, government is bad, but the people have to make a decision too. And if you understand that, it becomes a very inspirational message.
Down through history, various political and philosophical movements have sprung up, but most of them have died. Some, however, like democracy or communism, take hold and affect the entire world. Here in the United States, perhaps the most challenging and unusual new philosophy has been forged by a novelist, Ayn Rand. Miss Rand's point of view is still comparatively unknown in America, but if it ever did take hold, it would revolutionize our lives.
Many politicians today, Paul Ryan, Ted Cruz, many others, are now mentioning Ayn Rand, citing her. There are even been writings of Ayn Rand read into the congressional record.
I'd like to share a few excerpts from one of my favorite books, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Now let me encourage any of you who have not read Atlas Shrugged to go tomorrow, buy Atlas Shrugged and read it. What's interesting is in the last 3 years, my understanding is sales of Atlas Shrugged have exploded because we are living in the days of Ayn Rand.
Well, she sells 100, 200, 300,000 copies of this book a year for over half a century. So I think its ideas are a presence in our society.
Who are you, Ayn Rand? When I say that, I would like to know just a little bit of your vital statistics. You have an accent which is...
Russian.
Russian. You were born in Russia?
Yes.
Came here?
Oh, about 30 years ago.
And whence did this philosophy of yours come?
Out of my own mind, with the sole acknowledgement of a debt to Aristotle, who is the only philosopher that ever influenced me. I devised the rest of my philosophy myself.
So when you dig into her personal story, you see the foundations of her philosophy. It was a gut reaction. It was a moral reaction against oppressive government under communism. She was a refugee of Russia as a young woman, as a teenager. She fled that oppressive world that she would later write about. So when she came to the United States, she thought that she had achieved her greatest goal, to be free, only to discover that there were forces in the United States that were operating under the same corrosive philosophy of collectivism, and I think that inspired all of her work here in the States.
And Ayn Rand was the first to say, you cannot have a society without a government. She rejected the early libertarian thinkers who really wanted no government. But her purpose was that government should be independent, that its role was to protect the individual. Government would serve the individual. That's what our founders said. Not the individuals would serve government. And so she felt it needed to be limited.
There are so many parallels between the story told in Atlas Shrugged and what's happening today. One of the parallels is all the politicians talk about, this is in the public interest. This is taking care of a failure of capitalism or whatever. But what's behind the scenes, what you find out is that they're giving subsidies to their crony capitalist friends. There's so many examples of that in Atlas.
And then we do what?
We say its purpose is to prevent destructive competition between railroads. We build public opinion against encroachment on existing train routes,
and then the National Alliance of Railroads proposes a rule.
The anti-dog-eat-dog rule. Every member must subordinate his own interests for the collective needs of the railroad industry.
But in fact, we're squeezing Dan Conway out of Colorado. You are thinking like a politician, Jimmy.
There's a lot of aspects to Atlas and how it touches different people. For me, I live and work in Washington, D.C., and I've seen in real time the way that the Wesley Mouches of the world corrupt the legislative process, the way that corporations hire a man in Washington to get a deal that they couldn't get by serving consumers well. That's the scary part to me. She figured out public choice economics long before it was a thing, and she also predicted the corrosive nature of this collusion between failing businesses like Taggart Transcontinental and politicians wanting to control your future.
You tell that little con artist, I've already got the rail offsets fast-tracked.
It is a complete disaster, Jim.
What are you talking about? What disaster?
Your railroad unification plan. We're going over a cliff.
What?
The board has hijacked all our rolling stock. The harvests are rotting in Minnesota, and we don't have the copper wire we need to keep the lines running.
That's not true. They prioritize the projects vital to public welfare. Some will just have to wait their turn.
Well, you tell that to the family that's about to run out of food.
No, don't be so dramatic.
Dramatic? What are you thinking? We are the last railroad that can move the harvest. If we don't get trains out there, the East Coast will run out of food.
So what do you want to do about it? You're the problem solver around here.
Yeah, I am. And what if I woke up one day and just said, I'm not going to find a way today? What if I just left?
You know, hell, you've been gone for a month doing who knows what. Who do you think has been taking care of business around here?
No one.
Amazingly, in 1957, she wrote a novel that we all read today and say, was she clairvoyant? All this is happening now.
Do you actually predict dictatorship and economic disaster for the United States?
If the present collectivist trend continues, if the present anti-reason philosophy continues, yes, that is the way the country is going. But I do not believe in historical determinism, and I do not believe that people have to go that way. Men have the free will to choose and to think.
The book itself is a 1,100-page warning that unless we allow our producers to produce, they may just shrug and go on strike. And that was the warning she wrote.
We have, for so long in this country, robbed people of their dignity. We've taken away their self-esteem, their self-being, because we've taught them in so many ways that the government is the answer, or that somebody else is the answer, and actually they are the answer. That's what Ayn Rand was all about. It's about getting back to what you can contribute.
Conditions in Washington are a lot worse today than they were in the 1950s, although I see progress ideologically in the country and moving in the right direction. Washington has not improved in any manner. But the ultimate change comes not only from the people who have to change and decide what kind of a government they want, but the people who do end up, even in a constitutional republic where individuals represent us, they have to be men and women of character. Because if they can be influenced by money, then the government gets sold. And right now there's so much up for sale, and that is why money talks. The lobbyists are very powerful, and government is so big. And so you say, well, what should we do in Washington? How do we correct that? And my answer is shrink the size of government and the scope of government to do that.
I am offering you Wesley Moucher's job. Huh? Now, there's nothing bigger than that. You're free to do anything at all. You don't like regulations, we'll repeal them. You want higher profits, lower wages, decree them. You want special privileges, grant them. You don't like the unions, dissolve them. You play it any way you want, but just think about it.
In Washington, everyone's gonna want to be your best friend.
You're gonna have power. Oh, wait, now what? What? I'm offering you the best job in the world. What is wrong with that?
But that kind of job shouldn't exist. No one should have that kind of power.
There are no voices to offer an actual pro-capitalist, laissez-faire economic freedom and individualism. That is what this country needs today.
Ayn Rand believed she called it laissez-faire capitalism. The state should just protect property, protect contract, have a system of courts for, disputes that always arise. Otherwise, get out of the game. You're an umpire, you're not a player.
Mr. Reardon, you will have to enter a plea before this court. Simply refusing to obey the law is not a defense.
If you believe you may seize my property simply because you need it, well, then so does any burglar. The only difference is a burglar doesn't ask my permission.
Sir, I will remind you the punishment this court might impose on you is severe.
Go ahead. Impose it. If you sentence me to jail, send armed men to get me. I will not volunteer to go. If you find me, you'll have to seize my assets. I will not volunteer to pay. If you feel you have the right to use force against me, then show it for what it is. Bring guns.
Every time there's a regulation put in place, it causes unintended side effects. Then you need another regulation, usually more onerous, to deal with the consequences. And that has its own side effects. It just balloons. We see that happening today with all kinds of energy policies, the mess that is Obamacare. And Ayn Rand, in her story, has example after example of that. What happens with price controls? What happens with licensing? It's just across the board.
Nice and easy. Hi, Dagny. I am Dr. Thomas Hendricks. May I have a look at your injuries?
The neurosurgeon?
Yes, but here in the Valley, I practice other medicine as well. Okay, this will only take a second. It's a diagnostic device I developed here in Atlantis. Every doctor should have one. It's amazing what can be accomplished without red tape.
In one of the scenes, a doctor has opted out of a government-controlled system where he can no longer serve patients, where he can no longer innovate, where he can no longer do what he trained to do as a doctor, which is to help people, to help patients, to solve problems. I actually meet doctors like that every day who are opting out of healthcare service in this country because they don't believe that the government will let them do their jobs. They don't feel like they can rightfully serve patients. So they're leaving. They are on strike, and we're going to pay a price for that.
When the politicians started making medical decisions for me, I decided I couldn't be a party to it anymore. Here in this valley, I treat my patients using my professional judgment, not some political directive.
The essential idea is people are quitting. They are, to use a phrase that became popular a couple of years ago, going Galt. That is, they're quitting. They're refusing to participate in this system anymore. Doctors are saying, I'm not going to live under Obamacare. I'm retiring early, or I'm scaling back, or I'm going into some other way of doing medicine privately. I'm withdrawing. And for some of them, that's just a personal decision. But some of them have spoken out and said, and given their version of Galt's speech, this is unacceptable. I will not comply with this. I'm leaving.
So when I saw in the movie this scene where Galt is saying to her, we're on strike, this place, we're not going back. Don't have anyone seek us out. We're not leaving until others get out of the way and not have us feel guilty for our success and the earned ethical effort that we've put in to have that success made possible, not by trying to undermine anyone else or pay for our success, but to earn it. And at that moment in the dinner scene, I realized that that's what it's all about.
Dagny, we are on strike. What happened to Midas? What happened to Doc? It happened to each of us. No man belongs to another, Dagny. But there are those in power who would have you think otherwise. We honor charity and benevolence, but it must be provided on the giver's terms, voluntarily and not by force. The powerful try to make us feel guilty for our success. And we are guilty. Guilty for sacrificing ourselves and for working under their terms. So we had to withdraw, to go on strike.
The strike, we use the term literally because, a labor strike, think of a labor strike. The workers go out, the union organizes them to go out because they want better wages, they want better working conditions or whatever. And so they withhold their labor to create a problem for the employer and an incentive to meet their demands. You know, it happens because normal negotiations have broken down. Galt's strike is, in a way, similar. The producers want better conditions, only the conditions we're talking about are political conditions. Freedom, exemption from all this onerous regulation and from the exploitative level of taxes. But instead of issuing a demand, you give us something, they're saying, no, we're going to stop giving you something, namely the fruits of our talents.
Meanwhile, in other news, predictably...
Where are they, Eddie?
Who?
Anyone who could make a difference.
I'm sitting next to him.
It's as if some destroyer is sweeping up everybody who could dig us out of this mess.
Who's John Galt?
I dislike that expression immensely.
This rebellion or this resentment about what is happening makes it difficult for people who are still in the system, because it isn't that easy to find Galt's Gulch. There's no doubt about it. In reality, it's not easy, but it's out there, and there are people, you know, able to get out of the system. But at the same time, I have the personal belief that the motivation also ought to be is to try to change society, that it would more reflect the values of Galt's Gulch than it would of the system that we have today and the system that Ayn Rand detested and what motivated her to write the book.
Hi, Miss Taggart.
Oh, hello. So they're not in school?
Oh, no, I'm homeschooling them. I joined the strike because I wouldn't put them in an educational system that doesn't teach them to think.
I guess they have some great role models around here, don't they?
Oh, yeah, they do. And they're very happy.
Oh.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Particularly since 2010, you're seeing a whole new generation of legislators who wouldn't be here today but for a grassroots uprising that's really motivated by these values of individual responsibility and actually respecting people that step up and solve problems. Almost every one of them read Atlas Shrugged. Almost every one of them acknowledges that that's where they started to get their sense for these values. That's a new thing, and what's interesting about this is they're not on strike. They're doing the exact opposite. They're actually showing up for the very first time, fueled by social media, fueled by these same ideas of freedom. I think that's a revolution. That's a paradigm shift.
If I ever meant anything to you, loan me the money that I need.
I can't. What is this savior line going to be called?
The John Galt line.
What?
Because I am tired of hearing that name. It means quitting, giving up. And I am not giving up. I am not going to quit. I'm going to win.
You know, in the book and the movie, "Who is John Galt" is a phrase of just giving up, of shrugging your shoulders and saying there's nothing you can do about that. When you see activists waving that sign or asking it today, it's the opposite of that. It's like, you folks need to wake up and understand what's happening to this country. So they've expropriated the meaning as a wake-up call.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Thompson will not speak to you tonight. His time is up. For years you've asked, who is John Galt? You've asked that question in despair and resignation as factories closed, goods became scarce, jobs disappeared. Your lives are becoming more difficult as the life force of your world is draining away. You have asked that question without expecting an answer. I'm here to answer it. This is John Galt speaking.
Ready, and action.
The reason we've changed cast has not ever changed, which is when we started on this project, we simply didn't tie the cast down for all three. But as the producer, you know, one of the sort of exciting things about doing these projects is who are we going to find? Because we know out there are people, artists, who would really like to be a part of what we're doing. Well, it's your standard bachelor pad. A bed to sit on, and then, a man cave. What else does a guy need? We're lucky that for our John Galt, for example, comes with a nice background of who Ayn Rand is and a familiarity with the Fountainhead. And when he heard that, we were going to offer him the role, started to study, Atlas Shrugged. And you go, that's just fabulous for us.
So, Dagny, have you made your decision?
I think so, but I'm not sure. And it's too important not to be completely certain.
If any of your uncertainty is a conflict between your heart and your mind, follow your mind.
That wasn't the advice I was expecting.
It's a bit of a mystery why Hollywood has never embraced Atlas. The explanation has to be ideological. It has to be that they're afraid of these ideas. They're afraid to disappoint the political class and their cozy relationship with them, because it doesn't make economic sense. The market demand is there. But I would argue the same problem is happening in the political class in Washington. There is a constituency for liberty. It's tangible, it's visceral. They show up on the mall, and yet the political class wants to ignore it. They ignore it, they laugh at it, they attack it, when in fact, that's their customer base.
It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It is what it is. Hollywood is a left of center politically. There's a reaction of that her vision of her philosophy of life, her view of the universe, is unsettling to them.
I think progressives are scared to death that people now have the tools to efficiently get good ideas, to realize that they're not alone, and a successful production of Atlas Shrugged is one of those vehicles. They're scared to death of it. They're scared that people will realize that they've been lied to for so many years.
I think her deepest sense was, I need to reach individuals one-on-one. I'm writing for the readers who think and can be reached. And I think that's how she would expect her ideas to percolate. They will spread out through fertile minds and come up in many different places in ways that you couldn't predict. And I think her best, deepest philosophical sense would be, I see that happening, that's how it has to happen, I did good work.
So I think this tug of war is going to continue for a long time. What Thomas Jefferson said, yeah, every now and then a good little rebellion is a good thing in a society. So I think that's probably where we are now.
But ultimately, it's the philosophy of the people in a country, as long as they endorse welfarism and militarism and warfarism and inflationism and think they're going to benefit from it, there's no way that you're going to stop it. A book like Atlas Shrugged will have an influence on the thinking of people, especially when we go to try to pick up the people and reform the system and make it a much better system than we have today.
You know what I think it all comes down to, and I'm going to give you my favorite Ayn Rand quote. It's the end of Galt's speech. The world you desire is real, it exists, it is possible, it's yours. Because Ayn Rand, she was an optimist. She believed in the goodness of people, fundamentally, and the possibilities of human achievement, human life.
You have no faith in anything.
Faith?
Only
No.
in your mind.
That is not faith. That is a conviction. Yes, I have no faith at all. I only hold convictions.
We couldn't help but think of the young lab engineer who said he would stop the motor of the world. You see, his name was...
Who is
John Galt.